isn't religion just a bunch of rules? I mean, I get that you guys go to church. I think it's cool that you go to church, but I already know what's right and wrong, so I don't really need to go to church. Or, I think church is important because it teaches us what's right and wrong, but it's just not really for me. Or I would believe in God, except when I read the Bible, it just seems like a big list of do's and don'ts, and I'm just not really into religion like that. You ever heard these conversations before? I'll tell you, someone who's been working with high schoolers as long as I have, I hear this all the time. People who are going in and out, who kind of do a drive-by conversation about, oh no, it's cool what you guys do, but isn't religion at its core? Isn't Christianity just a big list of do's and don'ts? What we are understanding there is that the person who's making that statement, at their core, they just don't understand what God's law is, what it's for, and how it applies to us today. And this week, I want to take an in-depth look at what does the law of God do? Is it just this list of do's and don'ts? And how is it supposed to reveal to us about who God is and who we are in response? And today we're going to start by looking at the most foundational conversation when it comes to the law of God. It's written outside of public courthouses. It's written on the side of buildings. It's the 10 commandments of God. Now, ironically, in the original language, it's not called the 10 commandments. It's not called the 10 laws. It's actually called in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, it's called the 10 words. So, of course, when you look for 10 laws, you're going to look for 10 things that say you shouldn't, or you shall, or you shouldn't. But now I want you to look at it through a new lens. What if you'd never seen a courthouse building where it said the 10 rules or the 10 commandments, but instead I gave you Exodus chapter 20, and I said, I want you to find 10 words, 10 statements, and 10 thoughts in the middle of it. What I would guess is if you weren't looking for commandments, you'd actually find something really unique in the text. What does the law of God have to do with God himself? Here's what it says, Exodus chapter 20, beginning at verse 1. It says, "And God spoke all these words and said to them, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery." You see, the 10 words or the 10 thoughts actually doesn't start with a command, does it? The first thing that we see in the 10 commandments, let's stop calling them this, the 10 words, the 10 thoughts, the first thought that's given to us isn't you should, you shouldn't, do, don't do that, refrain from this, eat that, don't eat that. What we hear instead is something that we call grace. You see, and that's the pinnacle of the understanding of what God's law is all about. When someone comes by and says, well, the church is just a bunch of rules, it's first of all, that's just a gross misunderstanding of what the church is all about. But secondly, when you look at the root of our law, when you look at the root of our text, it starts by saying, do you understand that I loved you so much and that I love you so much that I went down and I rescued you from slavery? You see, the law of God, the Bill of Rights of God's law, if you will, the 10 commandments aren't commandments at all. They don't start with a command. They start with a piece of love and a piece of grace. And God begins these 10 words by saying, dang it, I love you so much. I rescued from slavery. You were doomed and you were in despair and you cried out for my help. And I heard your voice, as it says in the book of Exodus. I responded to your cry and I came and I rescued you out of Egypt. Now he's speaking to a group of people who only know slavery. And so he begins to give them a revelation of his character to them. And he says, first of all, remember this, that I am the Lord your God. I love you. I brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And I'd like to think that that's probably the first word that was originally intended. The first word of the commandments isn't a command at all. It's instead God going, you know how much I love you, right? Therefore, which is why the rest of the text in Exodus chapter 20 isn't written as a you shall not. It's written as a therefore you would not. Listen to this. I love you so much. I freed you from the hand of your oppressors. Therefore, it wouldn't make sense that you had another God besides me, right? They didn't save you. They don't love you. Knowing that I am the Lord your God who freed you from slavery, it only makes sense that you would follow me. It would only make sense that you wouldn't make a graven image other than following me. It would make sense that you wouldn't set up another idol and worship them. It would only make sense because of how much I love you and how much I have sacrificed and served you, that you wouldn't use my name incorrectly, and that you would take a day and remember how much I've done for you. Because of how much I love you, I've put people in place above you called your father and mother. You should obey them. And because of how much I love you, you wouldn't kill each other. It's not who I am. You wouldn't commit adultery. You wouldn't steal. You wouldn't lie about each other. You wouldn't want what other people have, because I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. That's the beginning of God's law. It starts with grace.